Wenjogerera bali mu kukola virus. There is a virus they are going to release. Jirinde. Nabitegereza. There is a virus. Atende kubamu. Bagita. Middle East Asia, those sides of Japan. Eliyo bizero gye bali mu kukola egenda kufulumya gas. Oyinza okutandika okusanga tokyasi. There is a virus that's just being manufactured. Ate baleeta okuvumula eddagala nga bava mu Europe, America. Okuziba ssente. Ne batanetinga ki? Africa. Baagala kukutta. Lwaki baagala kukutta? Oli mu kontinenti engagga ne wagaana okugaggawala. Kibakutte. Nze njamba kubira kyo kibuye kigenda okujja mu maaso. Kijjako otegedde. Bwekuba kwetegekola ki? Bwekuba kusavinga. Bwekuba kutereka mmere otereka ki? People designing ebintu ebikyamu kati kabuuze. Ennyonyi z'abakola ennwanyi zigenda kubambwa. Ennyonyi ennwanyi zinnamuka. Zigenda kuba nti? Zigenda kuba obupume. Akamu bakakubisa mundu. Bakikolera ani? There is a lot that is happening in the spirit world.
I hate to say this, but it feels like 2020 all over again. Overflowing hospitals and thousands of patients with flu-like symptoms. China is facing a new health crisis, a new disease outbreak, which looks a lot like the Wuhan virus. And as always, Beijing is sharing no information. They're calling it a pneumonia of unknown origin. How Chinese authorities have described it, Beijing says it has set up systems to monitor the outbreak. If you feel like you've heard this before, you have. From the same China, some 4 years back. They're making it sound like it's just the flu season. We do hope it's just that. But sadly, the pictures tell a different story. Take a look at this. This is believed to be from a hospital in China. We cannot verify these pictures, but several videos like this one are going viral. Clearly, there is more to the story. We do not wish to speculate and feed the fear, but here is what we know so far. This is not a new disease. Experts say that China is dealing with an outbreak of HMPV. That's the human metapneumovirus, HMPV. This virus has been around for at least 60 years. It is quite common and easy to catch. So unlike the Wuhan virus, this time they seem to be dealing with a known disease, and yet there are reasons to be worried. The first reason is the scale of the outbreak. It is massive. Cases have been reported in multiple cities across China: Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei, Shaanxi, and Inner Mongolia. These 5 areas have reported the highest number of cases. But we don't know about the actual caseload. As usual, China has not shared any data, so we don't know how much worse it could become. The second reason to be worried is the nature of the patients. HMPV attacks the younger sections of the population, the children and adolescents. They are the most vulnerable to contracting this virus, and a large number of patients right now are also children. Plus, treatment is also challenging because just like the Wuhan virus, the HMPV is a respiratory disease. There is no drug to treat it. There are no vaccines either. And the symptoms are similar: fever, cough, and shortness of breath. That's what HMPV patients have. In severe cases, they can develop other complications like bronchitis or pneumonia. So they may need intensive care, oxygen, or even a ventilator. Again, does this sound familiar to you? We all know what happens when hospitals are overwhelmed, when there are too many patients to treat and not enough resources, when oxygen supplies are about to run out, when patients cannot find beds for treatment. HMPV is not the same as the Wuhan virus, but it can easily wreak havoc on the health system. China knows this too. In fact, its hospitals are already feeling the strain. Despite that, it refuses to come clean about the outbreak or its scale. It seems to have learned nothing from the last pandemic. It remains in a state of denial. Just look at this story. It came out 3 days back. The World Health Organization, or WHO, made an appeal to Beijing. It has asked China to come clean about the Wuhan virus pandemic. The WHO has sought data from Beijing. And how did Beijing respond? With a denial.
On the issue of COVID-19 traceability, China has always upheld the spirit of scientific openness and transparency as it actively supported participation in the global scientific traceability methods. At the same time, we firmly oppose any form of political manipulation. China's openness and transparency have exceeded expectations.
They say they have exceeded expectations. Does the WHO agree with that? In 2023, a WHO official was asked about this. He said, and I quote, "China's lack of data disclosure is simply inexcusable." And this is a sharp shift in the stand of the World Health Organization. In the early days of the pandemic, they had praised China's response to the Wuhan virus. We all know what a disaster it turned out to be. The world cannot afford a repeat of the same mistake. It must remain vigilant about China's latest disease outbreak.
Over the past few days, China has reported an increase in human metapneumovirus cases, a respiratory virus that causes flu-like or cold-like symptoms. The outbreak has raised concerns among some members of the public, especially given the memory of the dark days of COVID-19 pandemic, which brought about strict measures like lockdowns and travel bans. According to the Uganda Virus Research Institute, human metapneumovirus was discovered in the Netherlands in 2001 and is not a new virus. In Uganda, cases of the virus were previously detected in 2013, suggesting some level of existing immunity in the population due to past exposures.
One of the studies we did in 2013, we found that among those who come to our centers with such illnesses, about 1.5% had this virus. It's one of those causes of cold, cough, flu. When it gets serious, you get pneumonia.
Over 20 years, we don't have evidence whether it has significantly changed, but runs a seasonal course in China. And China has been always able to control it, much as the spikes come, specifically during the cold season.
Addressing concerns about potential risks posed by travel between Uganda and China for business and other purposes, Ministry of Health says that the current situation does not warrant panic and there is no need to worry.
We know what is going on. We need to watch. If there's anything to worry about, we're going to inform people. But I want to really allay the fear among people. It's unlikely this will be like COVID. COVID was a new infection. We didn't have any immunity to this new virus, but this is not the case. This is a virus that has existed, but it has increased in some populations. So we are going to watch out.
According to the Ministry of Health, there are no plans to impose travel restrictions, but advise travelers to affected areas in China to take necessary precautions.
No. We don't talk about a lockdown, not even in the immediate. For travelers who travel to some of these places, we have to appreciate the symptoms, possibly take these measures and ensure that you don't get exposed. We don't have any recommendations for travel restrictions yet, as of now.
I don't think you should worry people for now, scare them from traveling to China or Japan or India. In the case with this, because one of the ways of seeing that there's a problem is when you see a surge, an increase in infections in children, pneumonia. Sometimes they affect those who have asthma and the rest. You start detecting those, then it gives us some suspicion, and we start testing. I think for now, we should remain calm and just watch the situation.
The routine surveillance will continue, but Uganda Virus Research Institute says attention has to be drawn to the fact that viruses can mutate.
Of course, more needs to be done, because as you know, viruses change, they mutate. So those who are doing the sequencing of the virus to look at it, they will have to check, has it changed a bit to become more transmissible and cause more severe disease? Those are all the things that now needs to be done. For the scientists to look at it, is it the same virus or has it changed a bit?
Unlike 5 years ago during the onset of COVID-19, Ministry of Health officials say that Uganda is better prepared to handle any potential outbreaks.
The detection capacity is much higher, is much faster. The response mechanisms remain. That is on detection, but also in terms of care components. The health workers, we have a bigger pool of health workers who are trained and who can be able to manage patients.
Norbert Atkunda, NTV Tonight.
This is going to change drastically seasons and times. Abantu abalimi mwegendereze seasons zigenda kukyukira ddala. Enkuba bwegenda okutanyanga nyingi naye nga si ya lwezo. Naye ng'enkuba ntono yegenda okubeera olwezo. Seasons are going to change because man has attacked nature. Man has destroyed nature. Therefore climate is going to change. And the change of climate is going to bring cracks. Mumataka. Ojatuka watu ngolale taka. Sina Uganda yuka. Nense sewe Asia wherever. Ojakulanga cracks. Ngonisho gambe taka. Ese yoneke ndakola chi. Kubira. Walola byeka nyumba anda zitambulira wakulu taka alitambula akasigenda. Nge nyumba sigenda taka litambula. Linda mujabi etinawa. Ojakulanga bitambula. Ebitoka bitambula, bikutaka bitambula. Obadde omugambo tokayo omugambo olabasabye times okutambula, you have lost control. But just be vigilant. Just be vigilant.
Rescue workers in Tibet are working round the clock to search for survivors after a major earthquake killed at least 126 people. The magnitude 7.1 quake struck at around 9 a.m. local time on Tuesday. The impact was felt across the Shigatse region of Tibet, although tremors were also felt in Nepal and parts of India. A large-scale rescue operation has been launched with survivors under additional pressure as temperatures as low as -16 degrees Celsius overnight. Chinese state media reported that around 3,000 buildings had been destroyed, leaving thousands of people without shelter. Residents are afraid to enter some buildings left standing as aftershocks continue. Well, earlier I got the latest from exiled leader of the Tibetan government, Pempa Tsering.
The only source of information is the Chinese government agencies, whatever they report. So it's very difficult to verify the number of casualties of people who have succumbed to injuries, people who are injured, how many have been taken out of those places for medical attention. So all these informations are still not very clear because we do not have direct access to information inside Tibet apart from families who are reaching out because it's very close to Nepal, and many families in that region also lives in Nepal. So that is also one source of information for us. But otherwise, it's very difficult to confirm. And the weather conditions, as you can imagine, the earthquake where it happened, the epicenter, Tingri, and the surrounding areas of Tingel, Hase, Sakya, Nyalam, and Lamrim. These are other smaller localities around that. All are at an elevation of more than 4,000 meters above sea level, which should be about 14,000, 15,000 feet above sea level. And temperatures go minus degrees around this time of the year. So people are having a lot of problem having to be relocated, and some more than 30,000 people have been relocated so far, it seems, according to government agencies of the Republic of China.
And of course, you live in exile away from Chinese rule there in Tibet. But what do you make of the Chinese government's response so far to this earthquake? Of course, I understand you have limited information at the moment.
It looks like there is the government has sent in or making good enough effort to save people's life. And a lot of local Tibetans also from the surrounding areas, and also Muslim communities are also coming together to provide shelter and food for people who are surviving. So it looks like everybody is putting in their concerted effort to save people.
And of course, this is an area that is prone to earthquakes. There are other environmental challenges. What do you think the long-term considerations for this part of Tibet are going forward?
As we all know, the Tibetan plateau came out of the tectonic shift between the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate, and there is a big fault line. And the whole area is very prone to earthquakes, and it's very seismic zone. So I think this is a nature's call to warn the Chinese government about developing mega projects like what they announced last month, mega dam on the Yalung Sambo or the Brahmaputra River, which becomes Siang in India. The mega dam is supposed to produce 3 times the hydroelectricity than the Three Gorges Dam, which is the biggest in the world. So the whole area is seismic zone. If something happens to that size of a dam, what could be the severe consequences in downstream countries is for everybody to imagine.
And that was Pempa Tsering, exiled leader of the Tibetan government.
Children who are in America, Europe, just about to receive fire. Never anything in the people of music. Chibuyaga, Ngaswana Kana, Osama, Akana Kalinga Emma, Ngatikani have a Murunji, Ngakatwa Babo, Evan, and the Yes, we are come out, never much magician. Everyone will see today. Okay, we're and the Naya wins. Ambassador Tsunami.
In LA, 4 massive wildfires continue to spread in the suburbs of Los Angeles, and more fires are still popping up. The latest has broken out in the Hollywood Hills. It is burning in the area between Runyon Canyon and Wattles Park and has triggered more mandatory evacuations. More than 137,000 people have been forced to evacuate. Officials say, despite best efforts, the fires are 0% contained due to the strong winds and shortage of water. Now, for the latest, let's speak to CBS reporter Ashley Sharp. Ashley, thanks for joining us. What more can you tell us about the fires that continue to rage across Los Angeles?
Hi, Steve. Well, of those major fires that are burning here across Los Angeles, I'm covering the Eaton fire currently. We're in Altadena, California, just outside of LA. The Eaton fire is the second largest in size, but has proven the most fatal. We've reported 5 fatalities so far that the Eaton fire has been responsible for, and right now that firefight is active around me. You're seeing a spot fire behind me where a structure has burned to the ground, and just up the hill from where I'm standing, dozens of fire trucks and crews are actively fighting the Eaton fire up on the hill. You'll hear off and on fire alarms that are sounding around me as well, and smoke has filled the air. What I can tell you, Steve, is the difference is the wind. What were hurricane force gusts yesterday have calmed, which is a help to those fire crews tonight.
And speaking of those fire crews, Ashley, how have they been coping? They've been on the move and fighting these fires for well over a day now.
Steve, they're exhausted. We're standing right across from a fire hydrant where those crews have been coming down the hill, filling up with water and going right back up. It's an all hands on deck situation. Crews from across the state, from Northern California, where we are very familiar with fighting wildland fire. Crews have made their way down south. So it's an all hands on deck situation. And as you can imagine, too, the emotional weight of seeing a lot of what they're seeing. You're seeing families flee their homes with their pets in their arms. You're seeing people having to watch their homes burn to the ground all across Los Angeles County. It weighs heavily on these firefighters, and they too know that they have such an important job to do in getting these very, very dangerous fires contained that right now are sitting at 0% containment.
And tell us a bit about those people that have been leaving their homes and how the evacuations have been going. I understand there was some reluctance from some residents in Los Angeles yesterday to evacuate as they were being
The evacuation orders have continued tonight. I mean, tens of thousands of people under evacuation order, and Los Angeles' mayor warning tonight that there could be more evacuation orders coming through the night and into the morning. So if you're living in this Los Angeles area, you're glued to your phone. You're glued to information about where this fire is moving and where in turn you need to move. You asked about people who have evacuated. We showed images from CBS last night of seniors who had been evacuated from a senior center. They were sitting outside on their hospital beds in wheelchairs with only masks to help protect themselves as flames surrounded their senior center. We did get to stop by the Pasadena Convention Center earlier today where some of those seniors were taken. That's the question, right? When you evacuate people from places like this, from places like hospitals, where do you take them? Regional transit buses showed up, and they got those seniors to places like the Pasadena Convention Center, where right now it's a waiting game as to what comes next.
Yeah, and speaking of what comes next, you mentioned earlier about how the wind was not as strong as it was yesterday. That is a key component here for how firefighters are able to battle this blaze. Is there any confidence that the wind will not pick up again?
For perspective, I could tell you this, Steve. Yesterday, I could not be standing safely where I am right now because that wind would carry this small fire right here. The embers would catch and the brush surrounding me would be just a nearly certain risk that it would catch on fire. So we have a bit more confidence today. And, you know, most of these fires, yes, they are moving, but you can see, you know, my hair is not moving. Much behind me is not moving. So we're a bit more confident. You know, it's just a bit safer in this scenario now. Of course, we always have our eyes on our backs in a scenario like this. But when you talk about those winds tonight, calm, but we could see gusts returning tomorrow. That's what people are going to be watching for. But hopefully we're not going to see the hurricane force winds that were topping near 100 miles per hour in some instances here across Los Angeles.
A huge wildfire is burning through thousands of acres in California, with tens of thousands of people evacuated from their homes. This is the scene live in Pacific Palisades, a neighborhood in the hills near Santa Monica in Los Angeles, where we've seen pictures of burning cars, destroyed buildings as the fire swept through. Local firefighters say the conditions are as bad as they get, with gusts of winds of up to more than 100 kilometers per hour, fanning the flames from 10 acres to almost 3,000 in a matter of hours. The White House says President Biden is being briefed on the situation, whilst the governor of California has warned fires there no longer are seasonal, but a year-round threat. With more, here's our LA correspondent, Emma Vardy.
The fire exploded at astonishing speed. The combination of dry conditions and strong winds causing the fire's rapid spread. People evacuating began to leave their cars and escape on foot. Emergency services eventually bulldozed some 200 abandoned vehicles to clear the roads. The Pacific Palisades area is home to luxury properties and celebrity homes. At least 30,000 residents were told to leave.
My heart is in my throat, but we're okay as long as the firefighters said there's a ambulance to take us out, but this is like right at my doorstep.
We've been watching these huge plumes of smoke rising and the flames flickering over the mountains behind us. Now, people in California are used to wildfires and strong winds at this time of year, but this one is more unusual because of how quickly it spread and the fact it's so close to a densely populated area. Thousands of buildings were in danger of being engulfed by flames as emergency services tried to keep people safe. It's not yet clear how widespread the damage is to properties, but some homes have been destroyed and several other fires have also been burning. While the strong winds continue, there's warnings across California that more wildfires may start. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Los Angeles.
And this here is live film footage we're receiving right now here at BBC News from Altadena, which is in Los Angeles. You can see there a building on fire. Firefighters are just outside of this shot where they're trying to get control. It gives you a sense of the scale of this and the ferocity of the flames as firefighters desperately try to bring an end to these wildfires which are just raging through the whole of Los Angeles at the moment. I talked to David Latt. He was forced to evacuate his home. He lives in Pacific Palisades. He told us what happened to him.
This morning early, my wife and I were very unaware of what was happening, and a neighbor called and said, "Get out." This was about 10 a.m. And I went outside and saw what he was reacting to, which was a huge plume of black smoke about 4 blocks away from our house. I took out a ladder and I went up on the roof because I saw that there was fallen leaves and other debris, and I wanted to make sure that the fire, if it spread in our direction, didn't have combustibles on the roof. So I quickly swept that off. And then over the next 30 to 40 minutes, I watched as the fire got larger and moved in our direction. And as your reporter indicated, the problem here is extreme wind coupled with no rain for half a year. So the conditions are primed for a very difficult situation. We were ordered to evacuate, and the communication was extremely good. We received texts, messages saying you must evacuate immediately. And I have to say, our mayor, Karen Bass, had prepared for the situation by assembling material and personnel. So they were in the area, so the response was very quick. And even as I was watching in some video that I shot, you can see first observational helicopters analyzing the area from the air, or the situation from the air. And then you saw, I think they're called super scoopers, fixed wing airplanes that go close to the surface of the ocean, pick up water, and then drop it along with fire retardants to slow down the fire. So the attack by the city officials was very aggressive. The problem was, and continues to be, the wind. And again, as your reporter mentioned, the concern now is what's going to happen tonight, where the expectation is not hurricane force, but extremely high winds. And even though the personnel have been very aggressive in putting out the fires they can find, with the wind, it's very hard to know where the fires are going to be as they're spread. Embers are picked up, and they can go across the street or a mile away. So all of LA is on alert. You hear sirens, excuse me, and you can tell there's a lot of smoke in the air. But we're happily safe at a friend's house in the middle of LA, an area called Larchmont. The problem in Pacific Palisades is that it's a relatively isolated area with just one road in and out. So the traffic jam, it took us 2 hours to get out of the area.
And while you were speaking there, David, we were looking at the videos that you've sent us that you shot before you left your home. Just talk us through what goes through your mind when you know you've got to evacuate your home, you don't know what you will return to. I mean, what do you grab? And what's the pressure, the time pressure? I assume you really had to act quickly.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm a native Los Angelian. This, like earthquakes, is just a natural fact of living in the area. You're taught over and over again to have what they call a grab and go box, which means with your passport, tax records as you're preparing your tax returns, especially prized videos or still photographs and albums. So we already had part of that packed. We were also ready to go out of town. So we actually had suitcases packed with clothing, so we just knew to grab those. But you're right. The hard thing is we have paintings, some done by my wife's father, who's no longer with us. They're wonderful, but they're large, some of them, and by other artists, which we've collected over the years. And we knew we had to walk away from them. And that's hard. I mean, it's just hard to do.
So that there was David Latt, who I spoke to earlier, who lives in Pacific Palisades. And these pictures we're receiving now are the area, Pacific Palisades, which is the area where he lives, where everyone has been ordered to evacuate their homes because, of course, it's extremely dangerous, as you can see here. 30,000 people are under evacuation orders at the moment across the state of Los Angeles, which has declared a state of emergency as the wildfires spread rapidly. The winds that are sort of extremely high and the dry lands, as we were hearing from our correspondent Emma Vardy earlier, making it very, very difficult to bring this under control. Millions of people in California across the state are under a red flag warning, meaning there is an extreme fire danger. We've got a live page up and running at the moment on our website and on the BBC News app, which is following all our coverage and all the updates as they happen. So do stay with us here on BBC News as we keep you across this developing story.
Churches, places of entertainment, clubs, mosques, gatherings. Whatever abasajja abalina oluntuma around bagenda bayingira buli wantu nga baleetesa sakke. Whoever is going to organize anything on that fast is my prayer. If it's a church, beef up the street. If it is a gathering agreement, beef up the what? The security. Otherwise, the devil is planning to destroy people who have gathered together. It's my prayer. Look and work with security. The leaders must be awake. All of them are the jobs now. Not as time waiting. Oh, see what we all say. Look at the Yabatu. The evildoers, the wrongdoers are ready to disorganize the children of God. They will come like the sheep and wait your walls. They're not saying they will never together in church, but that's what you want later from the beginning. If you're coming to church, don't count too many things.
And we begin this afternoon with breaking developments out of New Orleans. 15 people are dead and at least 35 others are injured after a New Year's Eve attack on Bourbon Street. You're watching 13 News Now at 4. I'm Janet Roach.
And I'm Dana Smith. Police say a driver intentionally drove into a crowd during the New Year celebrations. And we're just learning police are investigating the incident as an act of terrorism. ABC's Rena Roy has the latest.
New Orleans famed Bourbon Street, now a crime scene as the FBI investigates what they're calling a terror attack on New Year's Day. Federal officials identifying the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen from Texas. Police say he rammed a rented pickup truck into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street just after 3 a.m., driving 3 blocks before crashing, then getting out and firing at police with an assault rifle. Officials say 2 officers were hurt before police shot and killed the suspect. Witnesses describe the scene as gruesome.
What we saw was insanity. I mean, something out of a movie. The graphic nature of it, and it was unbelievable.
Investigators say they found an ISIS flag, weapons, and improvised explosive devices inside the truck. They're now working to determine whether he had any affiliations with terrorist organizations. The FBI says they also discovered more IEDs planted around the area in the historic French Quarter, some of which were deemed viable, according to sources.
As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe.
Police flying drones around the area searching for more potential devices. Because this was a 3-pronged attack, officials say they're working to determine whether the suspect had help.
We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We're aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates.
They're also digging into the suspect's past, the FBI leading the investigation.
They're pulling on every thread to figure out the pattern of life of this individual just prior to this incident, the night before, the day before.
Leading up to the holidays, federal law enforcement had been warning local police around the country that vehicle ramming was a key area of concern and to be prepared for these kinds of incidents. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
Hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing the desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack.
I want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch.
Palaso yasose ngali ku stage ngayimba awo Alien Skin ne group ye naye ne batuuka. Ndowooza Palaso yagenda okuteegera nti Alien Skin ali muki atuuse mu kifo, n'atandika okumusindikira ebigambo nga tebimuwoomera Alien Skin. Abavubuka ba Alien Skin ne bavaayo ne balumba Palaso ku stage. Palaso n'avaayo bade tanaba n'okumala okuyimba kwe. Ye kye yakola kigambibwa nti saa 9 ogw'ekiro yalumba amaka aga Alien Skin esangibwa Makindye, n'atandika okuba abantu ababaddeyo ne bagenda ate leero ku makya ate ne bakeera ne balumba ki ne babalumba ate mu maka ga alien skin ne batandika okunoona ebintu badala motoka zibadde bbiri amadirisa g'amayumba ag'ennyumba ne bagiyasa ati ye alien skin aguddewo omusango palaso n'abavubuka be omusango ogusooka gwa malicious damage, ebyokubiri kubanga agamba nti waliwo ebintu byabwe gye babbye, omusango okugisa eryanyi oba aggravated robbery. Tugenda kukola okunoonyereza tukakase kiki gye babbye nga fayiro yaffe wedde. Tugenda kunoonya bano abavubuka tubakwate tubatwale ku mbuga z'amateeka.
Izo empisa ez'okukuleetinga gurupu okwewagira oba okwekuuma si nnungi. Ekiseera kituuse poliisi eteekinga obuvunaanyizibwa okulinda abayimbi abo abalina ebibinja n'okusaanyaawo ebibinja byabwe. Ebibinja ebyo birina okuvaawo, tebiri mu mateeka ate bigenda kubeera bya bulabe eri eggwanga. So nsaba Ssaabaduumizi wa poliisi nga mpita mu minisita wa internal affairs okumakinga sure nti abo be bayita ba komando ba Allen Skin abakoze obuvuyo bakwatibwa ne bakomando ba palasa abakoze effujjo ku makya ga leero bakwatibwa wamu n'abantu abakoseddwa baweebwa obujjanjabwe. So n'okulaba nti tukisaanyaawo ebyo ebibinja ze tuyita gang. Then kulwange nga promota nga sogera nga minisita kati so nkubiriza
but just wait. There was a woman I saw. I wanted to go to Paris. Never I tell you, this was this wife of Dr. Jesus, that woman. Grandma. I saw that I was finding her and man good. Never were in it. Never wow. Simple Angula. If anybody can do the wrong paper, then I do the wrong paper. Organized in very tremendous and huge bloodshed and sacrifices. I know of sacrifices. The living is already done. And many people are already engaged for sacrifice and for bloodshed. Now let's ask the Holy Spirit. But the living is already done. Wherever you're moving, wherever you are, be careful. The living for bloodshed, sacrifices, surrender is already done.
From the growing clashes in Mozambique in the east, let us now shift our focus to West Africa, where insurgent and terrorist activities are on the rise and creating havoc for governments. In the West African country of Benin, which is sandwiched between Nigeria, Togo, Niger and Burkina Faso, at least 28 soldiers have been allegedly killed in an attack in the northern part of the country. Authorities said that the attack took place near the border with the insurgency hit Burkina Faso and Niger, known as Point Triple. In a statement, the country's National Guard chief said that the attack was a hard blow to the security forces and added that the position attacked was one of Benin's strongest and most militarized in the region. Authorities in Benin have further said that about 40 assailants had been reportedly neutralized in the ensuing attack. Now, attacks in northern Benin have been increasing in recent years, with authorities blaming the members of the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda groups based in neighboring countries of fueling violence in the West African country. Benin's coastal neighbor, Togo, has also suffered similar attacks as these terrorist groups increase their presence beyond West Africa's central Sahel region. Moreover, Burkina Faso and Niger, along with Mali, have also for years endured insurgency driven by groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State Sahel province. However, this is not the first time Benin has seen such an attack in its northern region. In addition to the most recent assault on its troops earlier this week, in December of 2024, gunmen killed 3 soldiers who were guarding an oil pipeline in the northeastern city of Malanville. In another attack in June last year, 7 Beninese troops were killed at the Penjari National Park on the border with Burkina Faso. Reports suggest that between 2021 and December of 2024, over 120 soldiers have been killed in various acts of violence. The Beninese authorities, who rarely comment on attacks, also reported in April 2023 that there were about 20 cross-border incursions since 2021 in the West African country. And Benin has been trying to improve its security situation in recent years. In 2022, Benin deployed nearly 3,000 troops to secure its borders as a part of an operation called Mirador. Later on, the country's authorities also recruited nearly 5,000 additional personnel to reinforce security in the north. And the president of the country, Patrice Talon, late last year made it clear that there would be no more political compromises.
Benin, our country, has found its way, and this is irreversible. No more usurpation of political power by incompetent and ill-intentioned sellers of illusions. No political compromise detrimental to our development will be conceded to please anyone or satisfy any political consensus.
In addition to Benin's own efforts at fighting violent extremism, the United States sent $6.6 million worth of armored vehicles and defense equipment to Benin in November last year. Earlier, the European Union also announced 47 million euros, or nearly $49 million, to help fight terrorism and violent extremism. But with jihadist and terrorist attacks increasing in Benin, concerns remain on how well the Beninese forces can tackle the worsening security situation.
Organized a very tremendous and huge bloodshed and sacrifices. I know your sacrifices. The living is already done. And many people are already pledged for sacrifice and for bloodshed. Now let's ask the Holy Spirit. But the living is already done. Wherever you're moving, wherever you are, be careful. The living for bloodshed, sacrifices, salvation is already done. And it's going to be manifested in this way. That are going to take the blood. It's not violent boys. Mwenavuka kwa batagala kola. Ngawuye duwede. Bajaba kuwana sasi mabate. Mwebalakasi. Bajaba Uchimabiyeko. Mukama yewa na bandu walutimalimu. But my prophecies are for the whole world. You see your man, wherever you are, please don't dare you against his fights. Omwakumungo, bajamukuta. Ateka kuhuli ya sasi kale walachi. Omi yana tu. Mwaku mwenako sikala hako wala. Otherwise, everything is so big. The covenant of blood sacrifices is already done. Whoever will live out in this will die.
Poliisi erondodde abantu ababadde baluse olw'okubba bbanka, bana ne bakuba amasasi agabatiddewo, n'omulala n'asimatuka n'ebisago eby'amaanyi. Babakubidde mu bifo eby'enjawulo ku Mawanda Road, okuli ekifo abazigu we babbiramu Nansi wa Buyindi, okulira n'essundiro ly'amafuta erya Total, n'okulira n'Acacia Mall nga bino bibaddewo nga zikunukiriza okuwera ssaawa 11 ez'olweggulo lwaleero.
Twaze n'amutuukako n'amugamba weyale wansi, omusajja neeyala wansi. Watina wansi namugamba ntunuulira, omusajja n'amutuluulira, omusajja akwase episu n'agiggyayo n'amukuba amasasi 3 wano mu mutwe.
Bo babadde bakabaze ekyo ekyabakoze miyaga ekuuta.
Kino kireeseewo akalipagano k'ebidduka era abasirikale obwedda bakola bwezingirire okuyamba emmotoka okutambula. Omwogezi wa poliisi mu Kampala n'emirirwano Patrick Onyanga akakasizza okuttibwa kw'abaana bano era nti poliisi erudde ng'ebalondoola.
Ababbira abantu nga bali bakozesa bubodaboda batera nnyo okulinda abava mu banka okujjayo ssente, babalumba ne babateematema obuusi ne babatiisatiisa n'ejjambiya. Kati badde bano bali ku lisiti yaffe oba olukalala lw'abantu gye tuli kulondola.
Kitegerekese nti babadde baluse olukwe okubba ku banki ya Stanbic ku Acacia Mall Kamwokya era nga kigambibwa nti bazze beenyigira mu bubbi obw'emmundu mu bitundu by'eggwanga eby'enjawulo ng'okusinga bawondera abantu abatambula n'ensimbi ennyingi. Ababaddewo basanyukidde obwangu poliisi bwekozesezza okuggya mu budde abazigu bano nga bagamba nti obubbi bususse mu kitundu.
Naye nga teriddamu ne liyunga kuno bwakwata wanaati wadde ng'okugwa wali oba okuva eri ku muziyamu ate olusanyiza okudda wano. Kati bino kuba balyagala nnyo akatundu kano bakagala nnyo okuzaabulizawo okuddirawo.
Myezi nga gijjo waliwo be bakubira wali eri rawundi ya wali eri odda mulago ne bakuba ate ebadde teyongayo so bwaba bakubi empesa ginanzi bubbi bujja kuggwawo ezakulabiramu.
Abaali babbiddwako ku Mawanda Road bekokodde effujjo eribakolebwako era ne basaba poliisi okulawuna oluguudo lwonna.
Nze nga 31 nayinzikira yabba essimu yange.
Abala basabye gavumenti okwanguya ekyokussa namba plate eza digito ku pikipiki kyanguye okuzirondola kuba abababba kwe batambulira.
Ekyanamba plate zino eza digito zino zigenda okuba nga zirondolebwa ekinywisizaawo tujja kuba tuwonye ku bantu abo kubanga ebikolwa bino baleese nnyinnyinyi ebikolwa bino ebyokubbira ku pikipiki ne batta abantu.
Poliisi ekuŋŋaanyiza emirambo ne gitwalibwa mu ggwanika ly'eddwaliro ekkulu e Mulago ng'okunoonyereza bwe kugenda mu maaso. David Tamale yakusakidde ekkulire lino ku Rabukede TV.
Accidents and blind spots are ready to swallow blood. Witches are ready to shed the blood of what is among the lands of our way. There is an hour here that you should know about the same and small to different countries. Never come again to the in numbers, airplanes and water transport are going to claim a lot of blood. I'm going to claim a lot of blood. And he is going to go. Nothing is somewhere much. How do they go? The ship, ferries, water transport is going to be dangerous. And if it's here, I must move to different countries. But I'm protected by blood. But it must be what is being controlled. Airplanes and water transport.
We start with the developing news from South Korea. A plane has crashed on landing at an airport in the country and at least 176 people have been killed. The Boeing 737 belonging to Jeju Airlines had 181 people on board, and officials say they expect that most are dead. They say some passengers fell out of the fuselage during the crash at Muan International Airport. 2 survivors have been found. And this is the moment that the plane skidded down the runway before hitting a wall and bursting into flames. The aircraft had flown from Bangkok and was arriving at Muan Airport. The authorities say a bird strike may have caused the landing gear to malfunction. The airline has issued a formal apology. Let's speak to Yuna Koo from the BBC Korean service. Hello to you. Just tell us, you're inside the airport now. Thank you so much for joining us from there. Tell us about the people who you've been seeing and speaking to. The families have gathered there just waiting for news, aren't they?
Yes, that's true, Lucy. There have been 170 confirmed deaths so far. And people here, yet many of them are still unidentified. So many people, mostly the families of the bereaved, are waiting here, waiting for the announcement or the identification. So right now I'm standing inside the airport where also many other families of the bereaved are staying. And from even far away, I can hear some of the families screaming and crying as they hear the announcement of the death of their loved ones.
And most of the people on board the plane, were they from South Korea? I understand they may have all been on holiday in Thailand for Christmas.
That is true. It is known that most of the people who are in the plane were families. Even there was youngest was born in 2021. And there were many family members altogether. And also, most of them are South Korean nationals, although there were 2 Thai nationals as well.
And in terms of the 2 people who survived, we understand that they were crew members. Has anything else been said about them?
Unfortunately, after the announcement of 2 survivors, we are not hearing any additional survivors at this moment, and it seems pretty much a low chance to expect another survivor. And they are right now staying in the hospital, luckily not very heavily damaged. However, they aren't doing interviews, but it is known that according to local reports, they were saying to the hospital, one of them said they barely remember anything before the accident.
I mean, it is extraordinary when we look at the footage of the huge plume of smoke from when the plane crashed into that wall at the end of the runway. It is extraordinary to think that anybody could have been pulled out of there alive. Can you talk to us about what the authorities have been saying about this Mayday call made by the pilot, and also the fact that there was this air traffic control warning about a potential bird strike? What can you tell us about what was said by the authorities on that front?
So far, the investigation has just started, so there aren't much to confirm. But however, the authorities have been saying that they issued a bird strike warning just before the accident, and then 1 minute later, the plane sent a Mayday signal saying that they're in an urgent situation, and then the plane just landed without a landing gear, and unfortunately they couldn't speed down and eventually crashed to the end of the runway. That's what we know as so far.
And could you tell us a bit more about this airline? It's very well known, isn't it? It's a budget airline in South Korea that a lot of people will have used.
True. This is one of the most popular low-budget airline in South Korea. However, it is known that this from Bangkok to Jeonnam, this airway has just began operating this line. So people are saying that there must have been inexperienced staffs regarding this flight. However, the authorities keep saying that they need to investigate thoroughly to exactly know what is the actual cause behind this accident. Many people are expecting there have been like 1 or 2 bird strikes, which eventually caused a flame inside the plane. However, it is just a guess for right now.
And there's a huge number of emergency personnel were sent to the scene, weren't there? More than 1,500 people were sent there to deal with this. Can you just explain who is in charge, who's coordinating everything? Because we've got an acting president who's only been in the job 2 days. Is it the president's office and the president who's coordinating all of this? Who's in charge?
So, as you said, acting president is right now in charge of everything. However, as we know, there have been some political turmoil in South Korea in this month, and the prime minister has just been impeached on Friday. So many people are worrying if this accident can be settled quite soon. However, as you said, there are more than 1,000 personnel, securities, and those in support of the family of the bereaved. So we are expecting things to settle down soon.
And who is it that's dealing with the relatives, those people there where you are in the airport? Are they getting regular updates? Who's looking after them?
So right now, fire authorities who are in charge of rescuing efforts are making announcements regularly about like 1 hour and 2 hours every hour. So the family of the bereaved are now gathering in some part of the airport where fire authorities come out and say the updates and what they have found so far.
Presumably there's no other activity in the airport there. Presumably that's been completely closed to everybody else, and it's just reporters like yourself along with the relatives of those people who are looking for answers.
Right now, journalists are quite restricted to move around this airport, and the airport itself, the runway is closed until 1st of January. So apparently you can say the airport isn't operating because of this accident.
Right. And you may not be able to see from where you are, but we're looking at the images of the crashed site. It's dark outside now, of course. They seem to have turned the floodlights off. But presumably, although there are actually a different view there was showing a few floodlights a bit further away, but presumably the police forensics are still on site, are they?
Yes, true. And the police and the relevant authorities have been saying it is really difficult to investigate into the reason behind the crash because, as you mentioned earlier, the plane was shattered into pieces and there is hardly any wreckage left there, only the little bit of the tail part of the plane. So this is making the investigation and rescue and identification efforts extremely challenging right now.
I think what we're looking at is the tail of the plane, and it's my understanding that the flight crew, the 2 members of the flight crew who were pulled from the debris alive, were in that back section. But we also saw the forensics experts in their white suits going through the sort of grassy area around the runway, and quite a large site that they were covering, isn't it?
Yes, because right now, many people are so desperate to know the reason behind this crash because, as I said, many people are guessing there was a bird strike behind this accident. However, bird strike is not something that happens very often, but that is something that any airplane company should be aware of and they should have been ready to confront this kind of accident. So people are saying what people are insisting is to look into the reason behind this accident, because many people are using this low-budget airline these days, and they are now afraid to use this airline because of potential bird strike or accidents, devastating accidents like this. So I think the authorities are trying to speed up the investigation process at this moment.
In terms of the airline's safety record, though, I mean, South Korea has a good safety record, doesn't it, when it comes to airline safety? And this would be the worst aviation accident in South Korean history, couldn't it, in terms of the numbers? I mean, we know 181 people were on board and the authorities saying that they think most of the people are dead. They've confirmed 176, but they say that they believe most people have died. It's just a matter of confirming them. In terms of the safety record, though, South Korea has a good one.
That is true. People are saying this is definitely the worst plane accident happened after 2000. Before 2000, there was one of the big plane accidents in 1997. However, if we exclude that one, this is, I think this will be the biggest plane accident with the biggest casualties.
Yeah, I've been seeing that the plane manufacturer Boeing has offered its condolences and says it's in touch with South Korea's Jeju Air after this crash. The crash involved a Boeing-made 737-800. What is the CEO was talking earlier, wasn't there, of Jeju Air? What did the CEO have to say?
Actually, the CEO was showing his condolences to the family of the bereaved and those who are related to the passengers. However, there was small dispute among the journalists and the CEO, because right after the briefing, CEO tried to leave the location as soon as possible without answering the questions by the journalists. So right now, people are saying the Jeju airline and the relevant people should be take more responsibility and show some actions regarding this accident.
Yeah, OK. Well, thank you so much for talking to us from inside the airport. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll talk to you a bit later. That's Yuna Kyu there talking to us from inside Muan International Airport there. We can just show you the footage of the plane as it came down. It landed on the on the runway at the airport, and as you can see, going at quite some speed without its landing gear down. And this is the moment that it touched down onto the runway. And then you can see there, that's the moment afterwards where it burst into flames after hitting a wall. The death toll has now increased to 177 people. So that is the official number of dead confirmed. There were 181 people on board. And the officials believe that most people on the plane have died, but it's a question of confirming that. We do know, though, that 2 people managed to survive, 2 members of the crew who were based at the back, at the tail, near the tail of the plane, were pulled out and taken to hospital a little earlier. We haven't had an update on their condition as yet, though. We can hear now from the local fire chief, who gave an update on the rescue operation at the airport.
We are presuming the cause of the accident to be a bird strike or deteriorating weather conditions, and the exact cause will be determined by a further forensic and joint investigation. We are doing our best to search for more survivors. As a person who has seen the site, I can only say that I am sad.
Well, I mentioned just a moment ago that the CEO of Jeju Air has given a statement. We can hear it now. He's apologised for the incident and bowed deeply during a televised briefing. He said that the cause of the crash was still unknown and that the aircraft had no record of accidents and that there were no early signs of malfunction. He also insisted that the airline will cooperate with investigators and make supporting the bereaved its priority.
Firstly, I bow in apology to everyone who's cherished Jeju Air. Above all, I want to give my sincere apology and condolences to those who've lost their lives in the accident and their families. At the moment, it's hard to presume the cause of the accident, and we have to wait for the official investigation result from the authorities.
Well, the families of the victims of the crash are gathered at Muan International Airport, and they listened as the names of those who died were read out, and a warning that some of you may find this distressing.
양유정 씨, 박연수 씨, 정미 씨, 윤봉호 씨, 지금까지 22명을 다시 배용진님, 박은정님, 이행자님,
Those are the scenes there at the airport as names of those who died in the crash were read out to the families waiting. We can hear now from Jen Moon, who's a journalist in South Korea. She gave an update from the airport.
So it's been now 7 to 8 hours since the crash, and authorities are still making their way to rescue and search either survivors or those the bodies. Heartbreaking scenes continue to unfold here at Muan International Airport as more than 100 family members gathered in a meeting room to receive updates about their loved ones. They are being briefed every half an hour by government authorities on the whereabouts and the whenabouts of the investigations and the search and rescue operations. But I continue to hear wails of grief by family members. Some are expressing anger at what they see as delayed responses from authorities and the airline. Some of these families have been pleading to be allowed near the crash site since this morning, but were denied access due to the restricted nature of the airport zone. The arrival area of the airport is now packed with families and Red Cross volunteers. They're handing out blankets. Many people are hugging each other, weeping, and there's a lot of just confusion amongst people scrambling to identify their loved ones and fill the airport area where hundreds of relatives are gathered waiting for the news. No cause for the plane crash has been officially confirmed yet, but what the relatives and the loved ones are hearing is that the fire service has actually suggested it could have been because of a collision with birds in poor weather conditions. The Transport Ministry officials have said that their early assessment of communication records showed the airport control tower issued a bird strike warning to the plane shortly before it intended to land and gave its pilot permission to land in a different area. The pilot then sent out a distress signal shortly before the plane went past the runway and skidded across the buffer zone here at the airport.
So they informed the plane that there was a risk that they might hit some birds on landing and gave them the option, do you say, to land somewhere else?
Yes, they were given that, and but still, what we saw was actually a plane landing on a belly landing, actually, without its landing gear operating, and then the plane hitting a wall and bursting into flames. In fact, the plane was almost completely destroyed by this explosion, with from what I saw on site just a few hours ago, with this just tail part retaining a little bit of shape, and the rest of the plane looks almost impossible to recognize. I'm still smelling a lot of aviation fuel here at the airport, and so this was a large explosion that the authorities are still trying to investigate the actual cause.
It is extraordinary as we look at the footage of that crash to think that anybody could have survived, but they did pull 2 people out of the plane, didn't they?
They did. Those were the 2 crew members, those in their 20s.